movement, with echoes of Biafra still fresh in people's brains decades, probably more than half a century after. Today we'll be looking at where does the Igbo land go from here? Where do Igbos go in the hallowed chambers? Where do Igbos go in the presidency? And what needs to be done to ensure that this feeling of neglect or feeling of marginalization in Nigerian politics comes to an end? My name is Nnamdi Obaya, and this is Nigeria Kwenu. The program is Nigeria Kwenu on Afia Television, channel 254 on DSTV, and of course, 17 on Go TV. And like I told you, we are looking at the roadmap, Igbos ending the feeling of marginalization in Nigerian politics and asking the Igbo question in the broader spectrum of Nigerian politics. Of course, I'm Nnamdi Obaya, and I am not alone. I have some very, very special guests who are going to do justice to this discussion today. Let's start with the CEO in Genje Media Group and the co-convener, Peter Obi Support Network, Mazi Tochukwezoke. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Nnamdi. Thank you for having me.
And we have the former National Financial Secretary, NMPP, and also the former SA to the Governor of Enugu State, Abba Joe Idenyi. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me start from the basic question. What was your own personal take from the Presidential Election Petitions Tribunal? Let me start with you, Mazi.
I think having been involved in the PEP, because I was there about 16 hours of my life, stuck in there that day. I think the things didn't go the way many Nigerians would have. In the sense that the results were not, or rather the outcome was not what many people expected, put it that way. Oh. And if you look at that deeply, I wouldn't want to play where people say it is skewed against a certain people, because obviously you had APM there, you had PDP there, you had Labour Party there, and these three parties represented various interests. However, in judicial judgment, I do not believe that that was the wisest judgment to be given.
Let me come to you, and he's mentioned the fact that we had different people with different point of views. Everybody making the same general claim, which is one, INEC did not run the election well, and two, the APC might have been involved in some underhand tactics. What's your own opinion of the judgment with respect to different things the party brought forward? Because we saw technicalities used to dismiss the APM very early, and we saw a lot of technicalities, not legitimacy, but technicalities used to dismiss a lot of things. What was your own opinion of the judgment?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but then speaking from my own very layman point of view, I would say, like you said, it didn't meet the expectation of many Nigerians. But then we won't take away the fact that it's a job of lawyers and it's a job of the judiciary. So I can't exactly say for sure that this was what should have been done and what shouldn't have been done. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. And so that field is not exactly my field. My personal expectation as a layman was not met, but then I can't really comment so much on the outcome.
So let's go straight to the fallout. And before the elections, during the elections, and after the elections, the general sentiment was the Southeast does not know how to play politics. They don't know how to make alliances. And a lot of the things that came up were, one, during the formation of the APC, a very small splinter of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, which was at that time the political juggernaut in the Southeast, associated with the APC. When the APC wanted to become a force against the PDP, a lot of Southeasterners did not go with the APC, and it was seen that largely because the PDP had become what they call the Southeast Party, mainly because since the time of President Olusegun Obasanjo, a lot of people from the region had found themselves in prominent positions in PDP government, usually by appointment, not, will I say, not elected to presidency or elected, but usually by appointment. We remember the DJ of NAFDAC, very famous Okonjo-Iweala, Obieze-Kwesili, Professor Charles Soludo, who was governor of CBN, Mr. Frank Wike Jr., who was Minister of Finance. There were so many of them in many prominent positions. We remember Alice Madueke. There were very many of them. Yeah. Now, the question is, with all these Igbos that have been in prominent positions, and even the fact that Obasanjo kept an Igbo man as Senate president throughout his tenure. What is it that has gone wrong? And I'm throwing this question to you, Mazi. What is it that has gone wrong that still gives the impression that Igbos can't play politics? And it always seems as if they don't seem to have a hold of the political structure in Nigeria.
You know, I think it would be unfair to say that Igbos don't know how to play politics. If you look at the trajectory from 1999, military handed over, Olusegun Obasanjo was picked. Incidentally, he is from the southwest. Right. He governed for 8 years. Then the PDP on their own had this rotational agreement, power to move between the north and the south, not microzoning, right? Power shift between the north and south. So it moved into northwest, Yaradua. And by providence, Goodluck Jonathan came by accident. Now, if PDP, as you rightly said, if the Southeast predominantly have identified with PDP, it was expected in 2023. What many of us, the argument you've made, and some will kick back and say, well, politics is not served à la carte. However, when you look at it, power to move between the South and North, that is PDP agreement. That is not Nigeria agreement, right? So why did they not oblige to that power? Because had they done that, Peter Obi, for instance, that left the PDP, wouldn't have left the PDP. He would have contested. Maybe, if we are now saying the nomenclature South, he would have contested maybe against Wike, Anyim Pius Anyim, Oho Abunwa, and many others. Probably he may have won, we don't know, but at least power would have stayed within the South. So for a people that have been consistent in that which they believe in, if somebody now say they don't know how to play politics, they might not be at the national level what I do call jumpologists. They might not be jumping from one party to the other. But if you come back to the APC that you alluded to, when APC was formed, bear in mind, Rochas Okorocha, who was elected under APGA, moved to join them. Again, was Rochas Okorocha, Dr. Chris Ngige, I think Anio Okonkwo, and many others who, at that point, moved into, were they not enough?
But the argument was that we saw the ACN going completely. We saw the AMPP going completely. We saw the CPC going completely. But we saw that with APGA, we had the Chekwa Sokori, and we had the split in APGA. We had the factions come up.
That was under Victor Ume.
Yes.
The issue was, you see, the two cannot move together unless they agree. There was no agreement at that point between APGA was not the only party. Yeah. You still had PPA. Yes. You still had other parties in the Southeast. So I don't understand why people will begin to say, APGA didn't move. But there was a split because they did not agree. So that split, the question is, have you forgotten, we talk about ACN, we've forgotten that there is also CPC.
Yes.
Now, this CPC moved in whole because CPC was represented by Buhari,
yes,
and ACN was represented by Tinubu.
Yes.
So it is a merger of two people, not three. Two.
The AMPP, if you remember.
Well, the NMPP, where are they?
Well, but at least they had a sitting governor, Ibikule Amusu.
Yes, now, but in that agreement, where is NMPP? Why is NMPP still standing as a single party today? Why is it not? I mean,
not NMPP.
No, AMPP.
Sorry, AMPP. Yes. Oh, sorry, that was Obonionu.
Yes.
Right. So it's a small fraction. That fraction is virtually non-existent anymore. So it's the same thing. You can argue AMPP actually, led by Obonionu, someone could actually argue, if you go by the party chairmanship, that is quasi-Igbo as well, has interest in that. But the APGA and the ANPP, where have that merger left them? It is only about two blocks, the two major blocks. That is the ACN and the CPC. So,
and I want to come to here because we know that, and this is personally, even from my own personal hometown, yeah. Pat Utomi was a strong member of the CPC
exactly.
at that point in time. But the perception, and if you look at it, is that the Igbos were not in the NPP because, one, you had a large chunk of them in the PDP and you had another chunk in ABGA at that point in time. The question now becomes, what prevented some sort of, we saw how the Southwest moved as a bloc, and we saw how the North moved as a bloc. What has always prevented this? And when I say a bloc, I know you disagree with me, Mazi.
I disagree.
When I say as a bloc, let me put it this way. Everybody who is a non-actor in the Southwest is not in the APC. The APC seems to have created a dominant juggernaut in the Southwest. Exactly. What has stopped the Southeast from creating such a force that it becomes so relevant at the center that you cannot do without it in any party?
Well, I think one thing is very true. Politics is a game of number.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the movement in blocks, I think I totally agree with you that they moved in blocks. When Buhari came from the CPC with himself and Buba Galadima, and then Tinubu came from the Southwest, these other guys came from the ANPP, from the Obonionu them, and then this, I think Ibikule
Amusu.
Then do the maths. After the general election, do the maths. The maths showed that the other guys that came from this other block and the guys from the ACN
were more in numbers.
They gave more numbers to the APC.
Yeah.
And then the Southeast gave a very
marginal
faction of votes to the APC. So I think going by the reward strategy in Nigerian politics, because what they play here is reward, give and take. Going by the reward strategy here, they play here in the Nigerian politics, it was expected for Buhari to do what he did. I was never a member of the APC, but then it was expected for Buhari to do what he did, and that automatically left the Igbos out of that government, so to say. For the 8 years of Buhari, we just got really insignificant posts in the national government.
Or the barest minimum.
Yeah. So I think what we need to do as a people, it's wrong if you say that Igbos don't play politics. We play very wonderful politics. But then there is something that has, from ab initio, very affected the Igbos, which is this ideology of Igbo Enweze. Let me use the Labour Party for instance, because Labour Party was a structureless, in quote anyways, a structureless party. It was easy for everybody in the Southeast to rally around the party and deliver the party. But the party where you have a structure that you need to be loyal to, that you need to worship, that you not worship just in not that a structure where you need to grow through to the ranks. The Igbos, we find it a bit difficult to survive those kind of environments because of our culture, which allows us to thrive. We are the bosses anywhere we are. Take CPC for instance, where the Tinubu came from.
ACN.
Sorry, ACN, where Tinubu came from. Tinubu built a strong army in ACN. There were governors loyal to him, there were senators loyal to him, there were House of Representative members loyal to him. Of course, because he impacted in a number of lives here in the Southwest. Come to this side of the divide. Even the APGA. You can't have a governor coming from APGA to APC and then find like the 3 senators from there joining him to the camp. So there is the problem. The fact that everybody here is a boss of his own is one of the problems we have when it comes to national politics.
But, to ask, is that a problem? But we need to go on the first break.
Exactly.
We need to go on the first break, and I'm going to come back to you when we come back, because I want to ask if that is a problem, or is it that we're the ones doing the right things and we are not getting rewarded for it? Okay. But we'll come back. Nigeria Kwenu, we'll be right back. program is still Nigeria, Queno, and I feature on DSTV and of course Channel 17 on Go TV. And I'm going to go back straight to the Abba Joy Denny was telling us about us being bosses of our own. And I know Mazi was shaking his head and disagreeing that it's not a bad thing that we all stand individually and have our own opinions. I guess we're very Republican in our ways here. So, but I wanted to ask you, is that really a bad thing? Because one of the complaints the people in the ACN and PDP have when they talk about the Nigerian elections is that the Igbos never send heavyweights to these agreements. It only looks as if it's those that don't have any political standing that seem to jump to join the ACN, join the PDP. Even with everything that has happened, we see that a lot of the, stalwarts of the PDP since 1999 in the Southeast are still very much there. And we're not talking of the elected officials. We're talking of the party constituents down to grassroots. Yeah. If you go to Kano East and check the women's leader, it's the same people that have been there. She probably worked with the women's leader in 1999 and stayed there. So the question I was asking you, is it really a bad thing that Igbo stand on their own?
No, it's not a bad thing. But like I said, in politics everywhere around the world, then Nigeria most especially, what they play here is, like I think I called it...
reward.
Yeah, the
reward politics of reward.
Politics of cash and carry.
Yeah, not exactly cash and carry, but give and takes. And like I said earlier, politics is a game of number. And for you to negotiate, especially in national politics, we are doing very well here in our regional...
Are we?
Like, we are bosses of our own, at least when you talk about the economic structure of the Nigeria, we are doing very well in terms of resources, individual resources.
Let me take you to Bazi at this point there, because I'll come back to about he raised this point of us doing very well in our region, and this is another question that people ask all around Nigeria. The impression is that even in the Southeast, if the governors, senators, and House of Reps are doing so well, why are Igbo people spread so much around the country and having very low population density in their own major cities in the Southeast? And the example is that in the more of local government, you probably have a higher population density of Igbo people than you do in almost every major Southeast city except Onitsha, Enugu, Nnewi, Aba. Now, not population, but density, people per place. So are we really doing very well for ourselves in the region? Will we say that we are doing very well for ourselves here?
Of course we are. You know, we have to, you're limiting Igbo when you say that Igbo are spread across Nigeria. Igbo are spread across Africa. If you go to Togo, if you go to Ghana, if you go to Gabon, you see the same concentration of people. So, you know, let's look at our history. We are a people that are, you know, oriented towards going out to acquire. You know, people who want to go elsewhere and bring what we call akuluano, now brings wealth home. So you cannot limit them into a place, 29,000
people. Are we bringing the wealth home?
Of course, they are.
Where is and that's the question. Is there anywhere like Victoria Island, Ikoyi, or Lekki on a large scale in the Southeast? Yes, we have nice areas. You know, GRA, Transinkisi, Onitsha, nice. Enugu is generally nice. But I'm saying, is there anything we are doing here? And this is now not beyond aesthetics, even down to industries and a thriving economy that can prevent young people from jumping on the next bus to Lagos at the slightest opportunity.
Now, let me dissect this. We had the war between 1967 and 1970. After the war, by the next 20 years, you had what was purely survival instinct. Everyone to his own. So that means between 1970 to 1990, you had Igbo really doing, you know, moving out. That's when they rushed to go out. So moving out to acquire wealth. Now, come 1999, democracy returned. You have those who actually fought for democracy. Many of them didn't believe the military would go, didn't really go into it. And you had then, you know, not our first 11, get into politics, and now had their tentacles. But what happened is, if you look again, since 2011, things are beginning to change. If you take the leadership you have in the Southeast in the year 2023, first-class brains. You know, if you look at Enugu, look at Abia, and look at Anambra, you talk about first-class brains, right? Now, if we are not in a hurry, and if these collective, if these leaders that we have now collectively sit down together, we are beginning to map out short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Give us the next 15, that is what, say, give us the next 34 electoral cycle. 34 electoral cycle is 12 to 16 years. 16 years. You will begin to see the result. There is no meeting you go within the Southeast leadership that you don't see, you don't hear people talk about clusters. You talk about IT clusters, you talk about this, that, these are things before now. And we have a peculiar history that no other region in Nigeria has. Yeah. There is no region in Nigeria that was destroyed, bombarded for 3 years. There is no region in Nigeria that was systematically sat on, not to get under certain roof.
And right? That's the key question. Is there really something sitting on the Southeast that prevents it from rising to the top? Yes, or are we the ones holding ourselves back and refusing to push whatever is in our way?
No, there is a lot. If you listen to Dr. Chris Ngige, there was one of the interviews he granted. He said that, in civil service, that there appears to be a ceiling. Right? When was the last time, apart from Ihejirika, you've had an Igbo man head the army? You see, why was the research and development that was used within the Nigerian army, why was it destroyed? Why did we then have PRODA, where intentionally things were not meant to work? Why did no one ask after the war, how did these guys come up to developing even their own, APCs? They developed them. They refined their oil. So how come 50 years after fighting a war, you're not able to refine your oil? You only send out crude oil and you bring refined finished product. I mean, that's in pure insanity.
So, let me come to you now. He mentioned the civil service ceiling. So let me move into politics. Is there a ceiling in politics? Because you mentioned Ihejirika as chief of army staff. Yeah. Another key thing is, in the last 8 years I'm coming into now, we've not had, with the exception of the, will I say, semi-coup, which was done by Senator Ekweremadu in conjunction with Saraki. We've not had any Easterner at the pinnacle of the judiciary, assembly, or executive. And I mean in the really top important places. Right now, you could check, even now, it's even worse now. Chief of Staff, Secretary to Government, Minister of Justice, check every key. And they just even recently appointed an acting head of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Again, a former commissioner from Oyo State, Zaccheaus Adedeji. So is there a ceiling for us politically? Because you mentioned we do politics of give and take. What are we not giving that we are not taking?
I think we are not giving the numbers to the winners now. And it's obvious. This last election, Igbos did not support the APC. No. So, but then fairly.
So if that is the case, then what's the point of our federal character that they always seem to shout about when it concerns others? Because federal character is meant to be some sort of equalizer to prevent anybody from being marginalized. That if you have a president here and you have a vice president from here, then your Senate president should come from here. And we have a case where when the PDP, to be fair to them, had it done very well. But it seems as if with the APC, that's all out the window. We can't say no Igbo supported the APC. There are one or two there. Yeah. And the odds should be better even for Igbos that took the risk, because it means you're almost guaranteed to be appointed something. Yeah. But that's not the way. So is there a ceiling for us politically?
Well, if your former president told you that 97% against 5%, obviously, and this is a comment he made in America, and if you look at it in the real context, if you look at it in the real context of it, he said, those that gave me 97%, you cannot expect me to treat them same way. Even now, this government is doing the same by not saying it. But again, one thing we have to know is, he rightly said it, politics is a game of numbers. If we have not given the numbers, and those that we gave the number did not win, and we are getting our statutory rights, because all accruables to the states are not being delayed. They are being paid like every other one. 36 ministers, and they've given Northwest 10, Southwest 9, U 5. So you're not even taken into, because normally the tradition is you have 36 ministers, then you have one for each geopolitical zone. Now, the one for geopolitical zone, you are not considered. Why? Because you didn't vote in that line. Now, but there's something that I actually forgot. If you talk about the the ANC and the CPC coming into alliance, there is something Igbo does, is they look at the head. The reason why there was no prominent Igbo that, or rather the Igbo folk going with, is one, Igbo is not, they are, quote unquote, there is a lot of love lost between Igbo and Buhari, right from ab initio. When he came with Edwin Omezoke, not that we voted him, when he came with Okadibo, I do not know where that stands, but it appeared that it's something you can link back to the Civil War. So because he was the figurehead that, was in that party, obviously not many Igbo were there. So if you take that into account, bring it to the trajectory of Igbo today, it will begin to make more sense now to understand that there is a reason why Igbo vote the way they vote. They vote with their heart.
So let me now bring it back to you again, because this thing he just mentioned of us voting with our hearts and looking at the figure at the top, is that a dangerous game for us to play? Should we stop doing that, and should we now do like everybody and start trying to deliver numbers?
Well, I think in the Nigerian system, it's a dangerous game.
Okay.
Yeah, because emotions don't count in politics. So what we need to do as a people is, one, we need to have a rallying point. Igbos, there's no rallying point for the Igbo man, for the Igbo tribe. Everybody is to this way, to the other way, to the other way. And there is no figurehead. There is this kill him, that is what they say in Igbo. Yes, and then I think there's a way they say it again. Yes. So all our decays are being trampled upon, not by these other guys, but by the Igbos. So you mentioned Chuba, you mentioned these other guys. We don't value them here. We don't give them their credits here. And it's the way you treat your brothers from back home. That's the way your neighbors are going to refer or treat him. There was a Kweremadu. Well, outside politics, well, we are not, but then outside politics, there was a Kweremadu who rose to the rank of the deputy senate president. The sixth man in Nigeria. You saw how the whole thing played around in the Southeast when he wanted to. So there's a pull him down syndrome here in the Southeast. There was Nnamani. Where is Nnamani today? There was Rochas Okorocha. Where is Rochas today? There was there was Anyimpa. Where is Anyimpa today? There was this guy, Senator Ojus Okalo, who is still in the Senate, former D-Whip, I think current D-Whip, former Chief Whip. Where is he today in the politics of the Igbo man? The Igbo man sees his own brother as, I don't know what happens here.
Mazi, you're disagreeing.
No, see, I think it's very simplistic to say that Igbo man pulls his brother away. The problem with us is we almost want to have like a sanctimonious figure in order to accept. I'll give you an example. In the lifetime of Odumegwu Ojukwu, Ndibo saw him as a leader, as a political leader. Alex Ekweme, Ndibo saw him as a leader, as a political leader. Why? Because they appear whiter than white. The challenge we have is when so-called leader appear to Ndibo as to be of certain mix and character, you see that Igbos will not purely identify with them.
Could that be the reason why Peter Obi had so much support?
Exactly. Exactly. See, let me tell this. Let me say this now. You know, when people say that Ndibo followed Peter because he was, or because he's Igbo, I say no. It's just because of that sanctimonious characteristics that Ndibo are looking for. Remove Peter out of the 2023 election. Bring in an Osibanjo.
He would still have one.
Bring certain Ndibo Igbo, bring certain Igbo. I won't mention name.
No, would you like me to do that for you? No, I was just joking, of course.
Bring certain Igbo to contest with Osibanjo. You see that Osibanjo would have gotten over 75% in an Igbo.
Yeah.
And that is it. So the challenge we have is, somewhat, Igbo know, the way we do our Umunna meeting. You cannot see a thief and give him and say you want him to be the treasurer of your Umunna. But why would you then go to politics? A known thief, and you want him. So
let's take our final break and come back so that we carry the final segments because we've now entered a new angle which I want to ask about, which is legacy and who are our leaders? Because you mentioned the rallying point, and I think that's where I would want us to come back to and end the show up. Nigeria, Kwenu, we'll be right back. It's 10 o'clock. That means, of course, trading has now opened on the floor of the Nigerian Exchange in Lagos, Abuja, and at the Onitsha Exchange. My name is Nnamdi Obaya, and this is Opening Bell. The program is still Nigeria Kwenu, and if you're just joining us, you've missed a lot, but don't worry, that's this weekend. And of course, you can check our YouTube page. And of course, I have two very special guests. Mazizuke is here, and Abajo is here with us. And before we went, we were talking about rallying around the leader. You mentioned people who are holy, sanctimonious, the blessed Father Tansia and others. But I mean, it was only right that when the Pope came, the person he came to officially, was it to canonize, happened to be from the same region. But let us now talk of this thing, because the Yorubas hold dearly. You hear them talk about Awolowo's legacy. In fact, when it's time for elections, almost every Yoruba politician has round glasses and a cap. And even Tinubu has somehow played that subconscious. You have Sardauna, you have Tafawa Balewa, you have Balarabe Musa, also Aminu Kanu. The North has so many people that they still have parties that stand. I mean, so today, the Northern socialists that followed Balarabe Musa are still very, very strongly socialist. Is there really anybody holding the creed of Michael Okpara? Because the legacy of Awolowo, which went into Wema border estates, went into Western Nigeria Development, went into Dua Group, went into Wema Bank, went into Cadbury, Nigeria Bottling Companies, the amount of investments the region has, and they kept it going. Whereas the great legacy of Michael Okpara, which I think the most visible sign of it is the Enugu-Port Harcourt Industrial Corridor, nowhere to be found. So the question is, we're looking for a sanctimonious person, but why are we not holding up legacies? Whose legacy now are we going to follow?
Well, you talked about Michael Okpara. I mean, that's the MI power himself. And, after him, we had Dey Sambakwe. I mean, these are individuals that really worked. And you see, any Igbo man with grammars in between his skull respects this individual. And we talk about the so-called leaders that they do not revere them. I'm sorry, but because they don't revere them, because there is nothing that they have offered them apart from their own pocket. You talk about these people, the people I've just mentioned, these are people that governed and they went home and they had nothing. But today, somebody becomes a local government chairman, he wants to buy up the whole street within 1 week or 2 weeks of getting into office. I mean, that's not leadership. What is it that the leadership we crave for are the leadership that work for people? Again, I keep asking, why is it that a man who left office since 2014, right? That's Peter Obi. Why is it that he has consistently remained relevant? Why he had governors, he had peers. We had those that governed before him, those that came after him. Why is he only him that has relevant? That is the question.
It's a good question, and so to ask you about. So, do we now leave the political leaders, and should we now start looking for leaders in the areas where we are undeniably the success stories, the Cosmos Madukas, the Innocent Chukwumas? Should we now actually make those our leaders, and maybe we just become the Eastern Corporation and forget about politics for now?
Well, I think there was an answer in your question actually. Yeah. So, in terms of business. In terms of business, we are doing very, very wonderfully well as a people. But then, if you want to do business, you do business. Politics and business are two. Well, they meet somewhere, but then they are a bit too different.
Is that not is that not our problem? You see, we have this thing in the East where we've separated politics and development, whereas the nexus of two of them is development. The joke my friend from Ihiala says is that in Ihiala, when erosion is taking the road, everybody starts buying hillocks. Nobody calls the local government chairman to fix the road. So is that not the problem that we're separating them?
It's not actually a problem. Like I said, business and politics. Like rightly said, they are both for development, but then they are two different. They have two different modus operandi. They have two different ways of operating. There are two different rules to them. So if you are looking for a business leader, rightly, like you said, you can look for them, Cosmos Maduka, Tony Elumelu them. But then, if you are what brought us here was the rallying point for the Igbos. You can't take this. You can't take a businessman who is not interested in politics. Politics is a game of negotiation. I may be one guy in Onitsha that owns, sells, imports shoes and stores from China and sells, but then I might not be a good negotiator. Politics is a game of negotiation. It's a game of give and take. It's a game of building blocks. So if you don't have the capacity to build blocks, you don't have a place in politics. So I think what we are lacking, I'll give you someone in a rallying point, for instance, in the north.
Okay.
His Excellency Rabi Musa Kwankwaso.
Okay, yes.
He was governor in 99. He came back again. He left office in 23, right? Came back again in 27 to 211, right? Yeah. And then since then till today, he remains very, very relevant in the politics of Nigeria because he created impact. And apart from the fact that he created impact, people respect the impact. There are a lot of politicians here, I don't want to mention names, that created impact while in office here in the southwest, in the southeast. But then you find out that maybe his uncle or his nephew or his niece that maybe he impacted one way or the other to his or her life. And when the chiefs go down, you see that person doing a U-turn and following the next person. Rabi Musa Kwankwaso left office in 2011, like we said. Till today, the Kwankwasia movement is still very, very effective in not just northern Nigeria, in not just Kano, but the whole of northern Nigeria. Do we have that amount of followership for anybody here in the southeast? Is it that all our political leaders are they all terribly bad? They can't all be terribly bad.
But one man has proven to have that cult followership.
Okay, I'll give you.
Who? Peter Obi?
Yes.
Peter Obi, yeah, he's doing well. Let me understand. When you mention these political leaders,
yeah,
there is something we need to understand. You were talking about development here in the southeast.
Yes.
It will be very, very unfair to compare. You mentioned Banana Island and try to compare it with what we have here in the southeast. It will be very, very unfair to compare Lagos and anywhere in the southeast.
No, my question was anywhere as attractive for investment or people who want to migrate, because
is there a port anywhere in the southeast?
Again, that's another thing. Yeah. I mentioned also we're saying that there are deliberate machination of the federal government. The Assembly and the Senate are full of negotiators.
Yeah.
Politics is give and take. The National Assembly is negotiation. With all the concessions that are given to other regions, could nobody even sit down and form a collabo with the South to form a bloc that would negotiate for votes to at least optimize either Calabar or Port Harcourt to make it very accessible to the South, and let the Southern governors come together and handle their dredging to that point to move, if necessary, their cargoes upstream deeper into Igbo? Is that? I think we don't think strategically.
I think one of the, I think there was a piece written by Osita Chidoka recently that really explained why, it's an effort in futility to try to dredge Niger in terms of the depth, for any ship to be able to go. It might be more economically wise to talk about negotiation. That's where negotiation comes in. Maybe with maybe the Niger Delta, or take for instance Akwa Ibom, in the place of talking about Ibaka Deep Sea, which is about 65 miles away from Aba. Now, you can't compare that to over 500, if you're off Lagos or anything like that. So, at the point is, like I said, we must understand our story. Knowing now, in the urgency of now, I would say that it's actually since 2011 that we are beginning to have this conversation within Southeast. Before now, honestly, it's survival of the fittest. People come into political office to for their pockets. If you take the leadership we have today, I believe all these conversations we are having, we will begin to see them being implemented. Because take, for instance, Soludo in the economic summit that was had within the week, or last week, they're talking about inviting the Canadian for light rail in Anambra State. You have in Enugu, where a governor is telling you that within 180 days in office, he's going to provide public waters in Enugu. Since the colonial masters left, or rather, growing up in Enugu, the last time I can recall that water ran in Enugu is early 90s. Early 90s. That's, you know what that means, early 90s.
Yeah.
Now, move down to Aba. You would imagine if those governing Aba before now are human beings compared to what Alex Otti is doing, that appears to be a magician. You can see roads within 100 days. This road is unpassable. Now you take a picture before and after. It's saying it. So governance is not that complex. The issue is about leadership. And I do not know about Ebonyi and Imo. I don't want to get into that. But if you take these three, when it comes about influence, that we believe that these three, if they continue in this trajectory, will influence others, then it will come to a point, people will be, your citizens will begin to say, our own different. Why are we not getting what is happening there? So it's about leadership.
And this leadership, I want to ask you this question in particular because you've been a party executive. Yeah. So with regards to recruitment and people getting interested in parties, this last election, we saw Peter Obi do something nobody had done. The largest voting bloc, which is the 18 to 35-year-olds that never vote, for the first time, came out and voted. What is the plan now to keep these people interested? Because we also saw INEC quickly get them disinterested again.
Yeah, exactly.
So what now do we need to do, particularly in this region of Nigeria? Because that was what was really scary, the amount of votes that people, despite all the voters' cards found in forests in Inewi and drains in Port Harcourt, the number of votes that came out of this place surprised a lot of people. What is the plan now? He's mentioned the leadership factor, and of course we know that the kind of leadership people start to admire, they start to look for the next OT, the next Timba. Exactly. Everybody wants their bloodline to continue. Yes. What is the plan to keep the next generation interested?
I think INEC somehow, it was the NSAS, which gave an obvious awakening to the younger generations, and then before the election. And somehow the INEC got every young person, got them to be uninterested in politics somehow. But then there's something very spectacular about this new breeds of people coming up, especially the Gen Zs, like they call them. These people don't need any rallying, but they just need to like what you're doing. You just need to do well to convince these Gen Zs to follow you. They are blind followers. They don't need. You don't need to have that babariga to get these Gen Zs to follow you. You just need to have something. You just need to show it to prove a point to them, and then they will follow you. Of course, the INEC factor is going to get some people uninterested for like a year or 2 or 3, but then every single person here wants Nigeria to work. Fortunately, I've traveled to a lot of places, and then anywhere you come, you see Nigerians going through the kind of jobs, menial jobs you see graduates from Nigeria doing to just sustain themselves and then send something back home. Most times, they are very sad ones. So I think everybody wants Nigeria to work, and in the coming election, you will not need any miracle or any Babariga man to come and make them queue behind him. Any person that has the right leadership skills, any person that has the right vision, the Gen Zs will automatically follow them. And as the day goes by, technology and everywhere and social media brings people to light of what they should expect from a leader and the rest of that. So I think that's will keep them interested.
We've run out of time, but I need to bring up this question because you mentioned something which is who people will vote for, but there's also the bigger problem, and this again is starting a political party, the question of delegates and local governments. You know, the Southeast keeps losing out because when you have delegates going to vote, how many local governments do we have? And I know, I mean, in full disclosure, at least I'm semi-involved with a group of agitators. That is the quest for Anioma State. Because the Southeast, what we understand is presence in military, presence in paramilitary and civil defense, immigration, customs, number of delegates in parties for elections. The Southeast has only 5 states. And how many local governments are in Enugu? How many are in Ebonyi? As compared to other states? You know, just a final word on this. What do we need to do now? Because this is where we always lose out politically. What do we need to do now to ensure that even at that point, we're able to even influence election of candidates, even for primaries at parties?
I'll come back again to that, the power of negotiation. Sometime in 2021 or 2022, prior to the election, I think it was around December or November 2022, I was with His Excellency, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, in his house in Maitama, Abuja. So we were talking about, that was before he left the party, before he left the PDP. And then he already had his mind made up to leave the party. So we were just discussing, and then I had to ask, Your Excellency, is this the best thing to do at this point? Why must you leave the party? And then he gave a reason. He said the way these other guys are handling the party, that he is not comfortable with it. He said that he himself must not be president of Nigeria. But then if you want to be president, make sure you carry other people along. Sometime again, after the primaries that saw to P2B's picking up the Labour Party tickets, we were also discussing sometime in his house. And then there was something he said that caught me. He said, every big politician in Nigeria wants to make sure that he is part of the next government. He wants to be sure that he's not going to be left out in the decision and the policy making. At least once in a while, they will call him and say, how far? What is your contribution towards getting things done the right way? And if you don't give me the sense of belonging, that I'll be part of what you are going to do next when you become governor, I must not be governor, I must not be president. But then if I'm not going to be part of that, your presidency or your governance, if you are going to leave me out of it, then I don't think I'll go and look for the next person that I'm going to be involved in. So what we should learn as a people now, it is 4 years, it is 3 years. We should learn and begin to make conscious efforts towards partnerships. We should begin to look for friends across the Niger. We should begin to embrace partnerships, begin to negotiate. Power is negotiated for. Nobody is going to stand up, come from anywhere and say, it's the turn of the Igbos. The Igbo man is now president. It is a game of number, and you know where the numbers are. So we need friends from where the numbers are, from across the Niger to become, to get there.
Fair enough.
That's my honest, opinion.
Mazi, your final word?
Well, I think I will start with when the question was asked, what could, when he said what could prompt the Gen Zs to still get interested in politics, to your question. I think, INEC has broken the minds and the heart of so many young Nigerians, even the older ones, by dishing out, doing away with all the promises made. However, if we have a new INEC head, thank God that, Peter Obi to court has made off-season election. There are off-season elections to take some corrections, and when people begin to see visible changes, they will begin to be interested again. But one of the core thing that will make the younger generations get interested in politics or again or more is the totally moving to digitalization and technology of voting. If we had a situation where people are allowed to do voting the way you do your banking with OTP, double verification and stuff like that, that means a lot of Nigerians would be going to vote without minding that you could be shot or you could be killed, as normally be the case. You can see a leap, over 30-40% leap in a year. So doing that, I believe that's going to help. And on a final note, I believe that the Southeast is not doing entirely badly, in terms of negotiation. Because when we talk about negotiation, he talked about Kwankwaso. Was the Labour Party not try to negotiate with Kwankwaso? And he came on a national TV in front of everyone telling that, that negotiation is going to work only if he is going to be the president, that nobody was going to vote an Igbo man, and that Labour Party is even unlikely to get 1 million votes. So now the rest is history. So in negotiation, we must all come down and negotiate with each other equally, not looking down on one, on the other.
Thank you very much. I wish we could do this for another hour, and I'm sure we'll have to find a way to do this again. It's been a very, very lovely discussion. Many thanks to Mazi Tochukwueze. Okay, he's the CEO in Genje Media Group. You can follow them on Facebook, I believe, and YouTube as well. And YouTube, and he's also the co-convener of the Peter Obi Support Network, and of course Abba Joe Idenyi. He's the former National Secretary, Financial Secretary. That finance stayed in my mind. Financial Secretary of the NMPP and the former SA to the Governor of Enugu State. Many thanks for coming with us. Many thanks for enlightening and educating, and at least from this time, from our point of view, shedding light on what needs to be done. Nigeria Kwenu will be back next week at 4 p.m. on Friday, but you can still go on our YouTube channel. It will be there for you to watch this episode, and of course there will be repeat broadcasts on Saturday and Sunday evenings, and of course a lot more today on Avia TV, so you don't want to change your channel. Channel 254 DSTV, Channel 17 Go TV, and of course at Avia TV official on all online platforms. My name is Nnamdi Obaya, saying have a very, very fantastic weekend.